All right, what's up, YouTube? This is the GoatCast podcast. We are back. I am CW, joined by my usual colleague, BigNige. What's going on, BigNige?
Going good. I think StreamYard's having some technical difficulties. So, as we get through today's video, if you do see my camera shut off, it's to help with some of the bandwidth issues going on with StreamYard. Other than that, I'm good. I'm ready to get into today's video and hopefully won't keep you guys too long for what we got today.
Yeah, StreamYard tonight seems to be not on our side, but hopefully you guys are here with us. And we want to thank you guys for last week. I know last week was a crazy um show. We had some guests and it was fun, and we hear you guys. We posted the community tab for if you guys want us to do more, have more guests on the show, and we heard you guys. We're going to try to do that. Unfortunately, this week Sports Talk only, who was going to probably join us throughout these next weeks, he couldn't make it, and we're just, we got to get in contact with some people, try to line everything up. But unfortunately, we couldn't do that this week. So you're going to have to see the two of us. But we do once again, we thank you guys for last week. It was a wild and crazy show. Once again, shout out to Sports and Fitness Rants who came and joined us. We thank you. Shout out to Dart from Michael Jordan Fans Are the Best. He only had one line, but he had a question for my man BigNige. Also, Dominique from Sports T. We thank you for showing up. So before we get into our main topic, which is the contenders and pretenders for this 2025 season, which we are 5 weeks away from, so not long before the NBA season starts, we're going to go through some of the comments in that last podcast, and there was a lot of them. And my man BigNige and Sports Talk took the brunt of the unnice comments from everybody out there. But we're just gonna go through some different ones I posted up here, and just to show we appreciate you guys, and we want to make you guys a part of the show. So let's go through these real quick so we can get to that tier list. We have my man DJ Hosta. I see him a lot in some different live streams. He said, "Do MJ fans still like Pippen?" Serious question. Yes, we do. I'm a Jordan fan, and we do still like Pippen, but we just don't overrate him like some of you guys do. My man, just being 17, I agree with Dominique. Mavs didn't need to put specific players on LeBron due to their great schemes in the 2011 finals. The same thing occurred in 2007 in the 2007 finals. Anything you got to say on what just being has to say?
Yeah, for this comment specifically, again, if you have a great defensive scheme, i.e., that zone that I was trying to convey to Dominique and all the fans that she accumulates that join the show, yes, you don't need to put a specific player on LeBron if you have a good team dynamic scheme to go against him. And the 2011 Miami's deficiencies, which we all know at this point, we know LeBron does well with shooters around him. Obviously, that 2011 team had some great star players with Bosh and Wade, but they didn't have the floor spacing that would unlock LeBron later down the road. So it was a choke job by LeBron James. Not going to say it wasn't, but Miami didn't put their best foot forward, which allowed Dallas's defensive schemes to prevail in that series.
And I remember Deshaun Stevenson did guard him one-on-one, but they did do what the Spurs did and kind of play him by committee. Mr. Shanny 82, he said, "Nice try, Kobe, Jordan, Kareem, and Tim Duncan all made all defensive teams in their 30s." This is, of course, when we were talking about LeBron James not making an all defensive team in his 30s. Any comments, anything you got to say on that?
Well, two of these guys are big, so I don't think they count in this discussion. Um, I think you can make an argument that Kobe's defensive, all defensive teams were more of a reputation than his actual defensive capabilities in his 30s. You even could hear from people like his coach, Phil Jackson, who was trying to light a fire under Kobe in his later careers because he wasn't all that on the defensive end. He had to take a lion's share of the offense, which is something similar that LeBron did later in his career. You know, as guys get older and as they are asked to do more, they can't give you all defensive effort on a consistent basis. It's just not reality. Unless you are a defensive-minded player who doesn't have the offensive load that a Kobe or a LeBron or Jordan had. I think Jordan is the exception, and that's why he's widely known as one of the best defenders to ever play the game. But yeah, Kobe, you can't give me the Kobe argument, and the other two are big. So,
and DJ Hosta, Jordan had pimping. We do recognize him. Moving on, Dream Dancer 11 said Ant is like a lesser T-Mac. The fact that he has Jordan's smile doesn't make him Jordan. This fool isn't winning anything anytime soon. I guess we'll find out how we think about that. Well, we think about that a little later in our tier list, but you have any comments? I wouldn't put Ant as a lesser T-Mac either. So that's a weird comparison. But.
Yeah, T-Mac's a very long, tall wing, like a 6'9" ish wing, Kobe said it himself. He said like T-Mac was probably the hardest person he's ever had to guard. So if you get that kind of respect, I don't think Ant-Man's getting that respect right now.
No.
I compare his game more to maybe D-Wade-esque, not an MJ or Kobe-esque kind of player. It's like a small kind of combo guard.
Yeah.
Kind of do everything, and obviously he's very athletic. He needs to flesh his game out a little bit more. But yeah, is he not winning anything anytime soon? I think there's a couple more players on that roster that need to develop a little bit more. They got to figure out what they're going to do with Rudy Gobert and those minutes down the stretch. But I don't think he's that far off from winning a championship. I just know the Minnesota Timberwolves need to make a couple moves before they're ready.
Yeah, and if I was comparing Ant to anybody, it would be, like you said, Dwayne Wade. But T-Mac is definitely not the comparison I would make to Anthony Edwards. And this is pertaining to our last subject of the night last week, which we really kind of glossed over. But Kevin Kingslayer says, I forgot Kawhi Leonard is a player who has the fundamentals, but the media has brainwashed people to be against Kawhi and Kyrie. I don't know about that. I don't know why they'd be against Kawhi. He doesn't say much. So, and I don't think that's LeBron's team that's against Kyrie. I think that's a lot of other people, but that's just my thoughts. And Kevin Kingslayer was not on your side, but he watched our short, and he is now a BigNige fan. So just throw that in there. Any thoughts on Kevin Kingslayer and his thoughts?
Shout out Kevin Kingslayer. I definitely would welcome him on the show to kind of maybe explain this point a little bit, especially about the media point. I'd love to hear his perspective on it. We could have a nice little chat because I like Kawhi. I just think he has a big, injury problem that's plagued him throughout his career. Other than that, I don't got nothing against Kawhi or Kyrie. Both of them are phenomenal players, and I think he would be good in the 90s, assuming he's healthy. Would I say dominate? Probably not because of his health, but he'd be a good player for the 90s for sure.
Yeah, that was my pick, but with everything going on, I didn't get a chance to really dive into Kawhi and how good he would be in the 90s. We have my man Wes Warden. The players today are not more skilled. This dude bugging. They playing under looser rules. I guarantee 65 to 75% of these guys today wouldn't even have been able to make an NBA team. That it got cut off. But that's a lot of players that couldn't make an NBA team back then. I know we talked about it back then. The rules were different. There were more, they depended more on role-based players. The positions mattered back then, but 65 to 75% not being able to make the NBA back in the 90s, that's a little crazy. But what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. That is a pretty hot take.
Yeah.
I definitely think 65 to 75% is definitely a drastic number. I think to your point that you talked about, they were more specialists back then. I just think the 65 to 75% that he's talking about would just form their games into being specialists. And they would have a nice role. They'd be a defender, they'd be a shooter, sit in the dunker spot, be, whatever the case may be, rebounding the ball. There's a role for a lot of players out there. I don't think they would just get excluded from the NBA in the 90s just because it was a little bit more physical. I think the
Yeah.
mental side of the game might be a challenge for some of these players today. You could have an argument for some of that, but 65 to 75%, that's too big
That's
of
a
a
lot of
number.
players. Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
lot. That's a lot of players that you're saying can't play back then. But moving on, Kenji Soranaka. The fraud wouldn't dominate in the 90s because he doesn't have a mid-range game. He only has dunk and layups when the lane is wide open. The lane wasn't this open in the 90s. Yeah, I mean LeBron doesn't have the greatest mid-range shot. He can make them, but he's not that. I wouldn't trust him in a last second attempt with a mid-range shot. But could he play in the 90s? Yes. Would he dominate? I don't know, but he would be good in the 90s. That's all I got to say.
Well, this take is already speaking hater vibes, considering you start with the fraud. And it's just crazy that all these people just come in here and just say LeBum, LaFraud, all these things. Like, if you don't think he's good, no, that's fine. That's your opinion. But
Yeah.
to do this, that's just crazy to me. This take, obviously, I don't agree with it. I think his mid range game isn't the likelihood of like MJ or Kobe, which is what they like mesmerize in terms of their mid range and offensive capabilities. Do I think he can play in the mid range and play effectively? Yes, of course. He's shown it throughout his career. I don't need to pull up the numbers, the tapes. I promise you, you look at any series in his mid 20 or excuse me, late 20s, early 30s. We've seen him show displays of mid-range performances like the hood of MJ and Kobe. So I don't need to sit here and poke my chest out about it. Like it's and then he only has dunks and layups and the lane is wide open. The lane wouldn't be open. Sure. I mean, if you want to say that, yeah. But like again, we're not talking about somebody who's 6'5, 6'6, 220. We're talking about 6'9, 260. Like again, he is a freak specimen with cat-like reflex. Like I'm just I don't really know where this is coming from. Like he is as big as a lot of stronger players, back in the day. He's not like a 7 footer. He ain't like 300 pounds, but I promise you, the quickness, the ball handling skills, being able to finish with either hand. Again, is these takes like these need to stop because nobody is stopping LeBron going full speed at that in that era like that. No, that ain't happening.
I wouldn't say no one, but they'd have a challenge against LeBron. Have Pam Brown. I'm assuming this is a female. Bro, moderate better. You allowing them to overtalk and never answer questions. That rant dude has no argument, and that girl ran. I thought everybody had fairly good arguments, even though we kind of got off of what we were talking about. Yeah, I should have. I didn't know. Some of these people were guests. We had our show kind of laid out, but some people came in and got on other topics. So I let them go, and everything was interesting, I thought. But next time we will kind of reel everything back in, and it was a learning experience. So I'll say, yeah, I didn't moderate the best, but no, I didn't expect others to come in like they did, but I thought it was altogether everything worked out. And she didn't run; she had to go. I think she was at work, so she had to leave. So not like she ran. Um, Flex on them. 3 said you. Thank you about Dominique Wilkins and Hakeem Olajuwon. Dominique Wilkins is the top 40 all-time NBA player. People don't get it. Michael Jordan prevented a lot of guys from accomplishments. Absolutely. I think Dominique and both Hakeem were players that could play, that stand the test of time. You could have them in any era and they'd be great. Just sad that
Yeah.
Dominique just really didn't get the flowers he probably deserves um, when he was playing. And we got one more. We got my man Ron Elm. If athletes are so much better today, then why are there still Olympic records still standing from the 90s? If players are much more skilled, then why are free throw percentage almost the exact same? Well, I'm gonna let you go, but I mean, there's just some athletes that are just transcendent, and they're going to have records that are just hard to beat. I mean, that's just the gist of it. And as far as free throw percentages, there are a lot of guys that, for whatever reason, do not shoot well stationary. So you can practice all you want, but when it comes game time and time to show and prove, you miss. So that's my 2 cents on that. What's up, random clips? LeBron would destroy the 90s. Yeah. So we'll let my man BigNige talk about this one, and then we'll get into our main event.
Well, I'm gonna first shout out random clips. Definitely agree. LeBron would definitely do work in the '90s, you know. And going back to the previous point real quick, obviously the show I wasn't prepared to have the guests come on, Dominique come on and attack me for saying LeBron would dominate the '90s. I wasn't even going there. I was just saying that because everybody on the panel knew I was a LeBron fan, and obviously, if I was prepared to make my case, I definitely would have done so. But I was just saying it as a joke, obviously, even though I do believe it. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. So he's saying that if athletes are so much better today, why are there still, records still standing from the '90s? Like you said, I mean, some pantheon great players have played in the '90s, so some of those records just won't be broke. And that doesn't matter how skilled the players get today. Some of those players are just that good, and were that good that early on. Um, and the whole free throw percentage thing, I mean, just like you said, some players just will never be good at shooting stationary shots, especially free throws. So I don't think we can only look at free throw percentage as a skill for today's players because they can do a plethora of other things. So other than that, and Brandon Clips brought up no zone defense, one-on-one coverage, which is true. I'm pretty sure it was Jason Williams. He was on a podcast with I don't know JJ Redick or somebody, but he broke it down on how like MJ would score a lot of one-on-one points because there really wasn't any help. It was just a lot of one-on-one coverage. So when he developed, that post game where he was able to score pretty effortlessly in the mid range when he lost his first step, because when he had that first step, insanely unguardable. But as he got a little older and it was still more one-on-one coverage, all he had to do was put his back to his defender and just shoot over the top with that beautiful post fade. And it was great. He's one-on-one and he deserves all the credit in the world, but he did benefit from some one-on-one coverage a lot of times. So you put LeBron in that same coverage, I expect him to do just as not good, if not better.
Jordan would shoot over those zone defenses. But with that said, we're going to go into our main focus for tonight, which is the 2025 NBA season. And let's look at these teams and see who are contenders, pretenders, and who's a sleeper team. When I say sleepers, I'm talking about teams that can do much like the 2019 Toronto Raptors and surprise everybody. We knew Kawhi Leonard was great back then, but we never thought they would be 2019 champions, not with the Golden State Warriors still intact with Steph, Clay, and Kevin Durant, but we saw a different game and a different thing. I mean, there were lots of circumstances on why they won that championship, but either way, they're champions. So we're going
Three
to
guys went down.
I mean, hey, that's the basketball gods telling you it was the Toronto Raptors time. So we're going to let me share my screen. We're going to get into this tier list right here. Let me full screen it. Hopefully everybody can see that. So as I said, we have contenders, sleepers, and I misspelled pretenders. Don't do this at work. So pretenders, I'm gonna spell it right. So we're gonna start at the very top of the list, which is the Indiana Pacers. So I asked BigNige, are the Indiana Pacers pretenders, sleepers, or contenders? They were in the Eastern Conference Finals last year. Of course, lost to the Golden State, uh, Boston Celtics,
Mhm.
as Boston dominated these past playoffs. But now that they may have their team completely intact, are they contenders, sleepers, pretenders? What do you think?
I'm gonna lean more on pretenders. I don't think that if they were to run it back this year, assuming the entire Eastern Conference is healthy, I just don't see them beating, the top teams. I don't see them beating Milwaukee because Giannis got hurt. I don't see them beating Philadelphia, New York, Boston. So if you're not in that top four, I really can't call you a sleeper per se. You can make the argument, sure, they've definitely, improved the roster
Hmm.
to some degree, but to me personally, I just think they're pretenders. I think they had a fairy tale kind of run in this past playoffs, but I don't see them replicating that coming up in this season.
So even with their team fully intact, you mean their starting lineup is likely Halliburton,
Mhm.
Nembhard, Nesmith, Siakam, Miles Turner. That's a solid starting five. They've added Wiseman, um, former
Come on,
number, I
come
believe
on
he was
now.
the number one pick from the Golden State Warriors. I mean, he's had a tough
Mhm.
time so far transition to the NBA, but
Golden State got rid of them for a reason. All
yeah.
right, and they desperately to this day still need an athletic big man like him, but they didn't want him. So that tells me everything I need to know.
Okay. Well, I'm going to agree. I think they're pretenders. I think they benefited a lot from everything that happened this postseason, as far as the different injuries, being in the right place at the right time. Boston pretty much effortlessly took them out. So yeah, I think they are. I I don't want to call them sleepers. I want to see Halliburton's rise if he's really the real deal, because this past season he rose to a star level. Can he rise or start that upward trajectory to superstar? He's going to have to show it this season, because I think they're going to lean heavily on him. Siakam took over a lot in the playoffs. He's not supposed to be that guy, but he was that guy. And they have a young team, so I think that they'll be okay. But this year just won't be their year. The Atlanta Hawks. Do we really have to? Do we have to do any kind of conversation on them?
Pure contenders, man. First ballot. They're
I
about to
mean, you
sweep
got.
the entire
I mean,
league.
just look at that
Come
starting
on.
lineup. I mean, you got Trey Young, Bogdanovich, the new kid,
I can't even
Risatch.
pronounce his name. He's so good. Come on now.
I mean, yeah, he's that good. Jalen Johnson and Clint Capella. Clint Capella as your starting center should tell you that you are in contender status, but not tonight. You are a pretender. I don't think there's anything else we need to say about that. Miami Heat didn't really make a lot of moves. In this offseason. Didn't they made the playoffs, but of course Jimmy Butler was injured. What do you think? The Miami Heat, are they sleepers, contenders? They're one season removed from being in the NBA finals. So can they somehow claw their way back?
I believe they lost, was it Caleb Martin
Yeah,
from
they
their
did
bench?
lose Caleb Martin. Yeah.
Yeah, that's their biggest thing this offseason was losing him and potentially Jimmy Butler in the next season, considering they didn't get that extension worked out. And there are talks about him, potentially going to a team like Brooklyn or potentially the Warriors. They have interest
Mhm.
in him. So we'll look to see what's going on with that in the future. Do I think Miami will still be a respectable ball club? Yeah, I think they're very well coached and they can make a lot work with not a lot of parts. But yeah, I have them as pretenders. They're not beating any high level Eastern
Oof.
Conference team. They
Oof.
just don't have the firepower.
Ouch.
I don't like I like Bam, I like Jimmy. Tyler Hero is nice. He's a little inconsistent for my liking. Those three your guys, sure, you can give somebody a scare, but are you really going to contend for anything? I just don't see it, and I don't think they're good enough to be a sleeper team.
Sadly, I have to agree. I mean, look at them in 2023, they weren't much match for Denver, but they were tough throughout that Eastern Conference, Eastern Conference playoffs. But yeah, they lost a key contributor in Caleb Martin. They've lost players throughout these last two seasons. Gabe Vincent, Max Strus, that were big parts of their finals run, and they're just small. So yeah, I mean, Jimmy Butler, for as good as he doesn't play much or play like he should in the regular season, and I think that's a big minus for them because they're going to need everything they have from everybody to get anywhere this season, and I just don't see it happening. Next team is the Orlando Magic, who made a lot of noise this past season. I don't think anybody really took them as a top 8 team out east. But they were actually in the 4 or 5 position last year. I remember they were just overwhelmed by Cleveland. They're a young team. They've made some pretty good moves. They've added or stole KCP from the Denver Nuggets, and they're young. They have a lot of talent. Can they put it all together to make a solid run this next season? What do you think?
I think their biggest question mark is 3-point shooting. I don't think they have enough floor spacers on that team. Can Franz Wagner kind of turn back the clock and be a respectable 3-point shooter? What kind of leap are we going to see from Paulo Banchero? We got to see Jalen Suggs and his defensive tenacity. Pairing him with KCP, that's going to be a nightmare of a backcourt. I'm just concerned about the shooting. I know Jalen Suggs can give me some things here and there. KCP, he's not a very high volume 3-point shooter, but he can get some shots up for you. It's more along the lines of what step is Franz Wagner and Paulo Banchero going to take to elevate this team. That being said, I can't put them in the sleeper contend. I can't put them as a sleeper yet. They just don't have enough floor spacing for me to say they can contend. They have the size to contend with a lot of these with the top teams in the East, but if you can't shoot, I just can't put you near contention. I mean, if I'm being honest, I mean, are they a step above some of these other teams? I think they're comparable with the Pacers. So to put them above the Pacers, I just can't do that. I think they're on the same tier as the Pacers. So I'm just gonna have to say pretenders.
Yeah, I mean, I think they could make a leap this year, but I'm gonna have to go with pretenders as well. Unfortunately, I think they can have a similar run, like you said, that the Pacers had. They just have to have a lot of luck, like the Pacers did. But if everything's fair, I say Orlando is a pretender. The Washington Wizards, whose best player is Kyle Kuzma, I guess.
Yeah.
They got their rookie Alex Sarr, who hasn't really wowed me too much, even in the summer league. I mean, they did get Giannis Valanciunas, so I mean, and Malcolm Brogdon, so maybe that can put them over the top. But out east, they are, and in the NBA, they're pretenders. What do you think? Am I wrong?
No, I don't think you're wrong. I think they might be having a little twin tower thing potentially with Alex Sarr and Valanciunas. I think Malcolm Brogdon coming in is a good pickup, especially to spell for when Jordan Poole, craps the bed and shoots, sub 20% from the 3-point line and sub 30% from the field. They needed somebody like a Malcolm Brogdon who's a steady hand, score off the bench, come in and start for you. He can do a little bit of everything. So I like to pick up there. Um, Outside of that, I want to say, was it Evan Fournier that turned down a roster spot for them to stay overseas? I think they offered him, I think, a 2-year
Yeah,
deal. Um,
yeah, that's kind of where they're at.
and that's very telling. I mean, if a guy of his caliber who played very well, might I add, in the Olympics,
6, yeah.
yeah, he doesn't want to play for you. That tells you everything I need to know. They're pretenders and they're nowhere close to contention.
Fair enough. Next we have the retooled Philadelphia 76ers. They did bring in Paul George from the Los Angeles Clippers, Caleb Martin from the Miami Heat, Eric Gordon from the Phoenix Suns, and Andre Drummond, I forgot him, from the he was on the Chicago Bulls, and they
Mhm.
bought my man Yabusele from that French team that posterized a certain someone. But the Sixers, are they contenders, sleepers, pretenders? What you got?
I got them as I want to say sleepers, but I'm gonna say contenders. I'm gonna give them their respect. I just the biggest question mark for this team is health. What's Paul George going to look like as third option? Is he going to be able to stay healthy for long periods of the season and going into the postseason? Again, Joel Embiid, same thing for him. You got 2 years, three key guys injury prone. You don't like to see that. Happy for the city of Philadelphia, but and they have some depth. So it's not like even if one of their stars go down, they don't have it in other places on the bench. But I mean, if those are your three key guys with Maxey, Paul George, and Embiid, it's kind of scary that those two and Embiid and Paul George are injury prone. But assuming health, I have them as a contender, and they could give any team out west or east a good run for their money.
Yeah, I agree. I have a strong feeling they're going to look like the Milwaukee Bucks did early last season, where they're going to struggle at first. This will probably be Paul George's first time, likely being the third option on the team. So I think we'll see some struggles there. He's going to have to kind of figure his spot out. But I think they made some solid pickups. Caleb Martin, I think, is going to really help him. How do you flip Tobias Harris for Paul George and Caleb Martin? I mean, they have to be commended for that. But I think they are contenders mostly because of potential. I don't know if I trust that team, basically because of their injury issues and because Embiid has been notoriously bad in the playoffs and they run everything through him. So if he's your key guy and he hasn't done well, then I don't think I can trust you. And he's in his prime. So this isn't young Embiid. This is prime Embiid that can't get it done in the playoffs. But who knows? This could be their year. I'll give them contender status just because I don't know if the East is as strong as it was last year, but it's strong enough to where I don't think they're going to be the favorites from that region. Coming up next is the Cleveland Cavaliers. Didn't make a whole lot of changes throughout this postseason. Off season, they're bringing back Garland, Donovan Mitchell, Max Strus, Evan Mobley, Jared Allen. That's a solid starting five. They were able to move on and play the Boston Celtics through the playoffs this season. Are they contenders, sleepers, or pretenders?
Yeah, so I have them as pretenders. I think there's too many
Oh,
question marks with this roster. I would have thought they were going to move on from either Garland or Mitchell, and it looks like they re-signed Mitchell. So we still need to see what's going on with the Garland situation. I don't know if I agree with having both Jared Allen and Mobley. I think there's too much redundancy there. I would have liked to see, potentially moving off of one of their guards and making a decision between Jared Allen and Evan Mobley and just going for that direction. Because we got to see a little bit of Evan Mobley's upside, a little bit of his floor spacing capabilities with him being the five alone. And as he matched up against the Celtics, he dominated them, point blank, period. So I think there's too many question marks with this roster. Will they be good in the regular season? Sure, they'll be a top five seed in the Eastern Conference, no doubt about it. But when we talk about contention, I just think they have too many gaps on the team, and again, that small forward position is sorely lacking somebody who can really put the ball in the hole when your guards are struggling, and when your bigs are not producing.
I'll give you that one. I think we will probably see a move by trade deadline for either Mobley or Jared Allen. I'm assuming probably Jared Allen's the one that they will let go. So let's see what they potentially get back in that scenario. I think we'll see something of that nature, and maybe even Garland. I mean, like you said, I think those two are kind of redundant. Garland have shown that he's just not on Mitchell's level, so I think they could maybe flip him into something that can help them as they go into playoff season. Next up, we had the Phoenix Suns. Got trampled in the playoffs this past season. Haven't done too much to rectify that. Their projected starting five is Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, Grayson Allen, Kevin Durant, and Nurkic. Um, is Phoenix a contender? Are they a contender, a sleeper, or a pretender?
They're a pretender. I mean, we can't kid ourselves with this roster. Sure, they have some firepower, but they don't have no defense. I mean, you got three guys who are 6'6" and under as your 1 through 3. I mean, that's just too small in the West. The West is big, the West is loaded. You can't contend with guys like Luca, LeBron, and Anthony Edwards with just small guards. We just know it's just not a recipe for success. So no, they're a pretender.
Now, if you had to play Grayson Allen at the three, you're not in the best shape for getting anywhere out of the West with the teams that are out there. That's a murderer's row out there, and they've got to come up with something better than what they're showing. Next, a team near and dear to our hearts, the Charlotte Hornets, here in the great state of North Carolina. They re-signed Miles Bridges. They got Josh Green from the Dallas Mavericks. Got an old man, Taj Gibson, on that team. Are they prepared to shake off the image of them not being anything other than a lottery team and become a sleeper or contender? What do you think?
I think this team's ceiling is playing at best. Um, I think LaMelo Ball is starting to kind of show a little bit of an injury history. To
Yes.
some Hornets fans even consider moving on from him. I don't know if I'd go that far, but I want to see what him and Brandon Miller look like together. We just need to see LaMelo's health. When healthy, he can take this team fringe playing team, maybe even a lower 8 seed. But for the most part, I'd say this team's playing, and I mean, none of their moves push the needle too much. Taj Gibson's good for like a locker room guy, veteran experience, keep these young guys engaged. Grant Williams talks big, doesn't perform all time high. So again, if he's somebody you give key minutes to, you know, good for you, I guess, but that doesn't spell for a contender. And yeah, that's pretty much sums up the Hornets. They're pretenders.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything else you can say about the Charlotte Hornets, but I'm sure there's plenty we can say about the Milwaukee Bucks, who came off a very disappointing season last year. Man, many of us, myself included, had them slotted in as an easy team into the finals. We had them running roughshod over the Celtics, Sixers, Cleveland, all of those teams out east, but it just seems like Dame and Giannis are like oil and water. They don't mix too well, and they're a very old team. And right now, their starters would be Dame, Pat Connaughton, um, Chris Middleton, Giannis, and Brooke Lopez, which is like the senior citizen uh, team out east. What do you think? Are they? And they haven't really made any moves. They brought on Tarian Prince. They still have Bobby Portis, Beauchamp, contenders, sleepers, or pretenders. Will this be their year to rectify these past couple of years where they've been looking kind of rough?
I'm gonna put them in the contender category. Um,
Ooh.
we didn't get to see them fully unlock. This is the first year. This is Giannis playing off the ball. He's been pretty ball dominant throughout his career as he was getting better and better. Um, They had some spurts where they were playing through playing through Dame, which is what they should get back to. Dame's way better with the ball in his hands and off the ball. Giannis needs to kind of learn how to play off the ball, kind of set screens, roll hard. He wasn't that good at that this season, and that's kind of why they deviated from that. And Giannis started looking better as he put the ball in his hands more, and the Dame started struggling because he was playing more off the ball. I think Giannis has to make the sacrifice. You have to put the ball in Dame's hands for this team to be fully unlocked. That being said, assuming health, we have to put them in contenders that category. Giannis is easily a top 5 player in today's game, and that Bucks roster isn't the greatest, but you have enough where you can easily be a top 4 seed in the Eastern Conference and contend. We'll see what the rest of the pieces fall in line, and of course you got Doc Rivers as a coach, so that's playing against you as well. But the greatness of Giannis Antetokounmpo, I have that team as a contender. How far, you have to ask me later in the season, but they are a contender.
Yeah, I want to believe that because I'm slightly a Milwaukee Buck fan. I like Giannis, even though he's kind of his some of his antics have kind of got to me. But if any team I think can turn it around, I think it's the Bucks. I think if Dame and Giannis can figure it out, don't know if that's the case under Doc. I give Doc like 13 games. If they're not killing it, I believe he's gone. But either way, I think they'll be a good team. I don't think the East is as strong as it was last year. But there's some challenges, big challenges out there for the Bucks. They just need to stay healthy, and I think Dame and Giannis are good enough players so they'll figure it out. And I think they'll be in the top 4 out East. Now, a team that hasn't had much luck in their entire time in the NBA. The Los Angeles Clippers lost Paul George, but decided to pay James Harden. They brought in Derrick Jones Jr. from the Western Conference champions, Dallas Mavericks. Brought back Nick Batum. For whatever reason, kept Bones Highland. Is this a contender? Are the Los Angeles Lakers, if we're going to put if they are healthy, you have James Harden, Terrence Mance, Kawhi Leonard, Derrick Jones Jr., Zubac, Norman Powell, and then you kind of have somewhat of a bench. Do you think they can make a run this year like they did somewhat last year and maybe continue that into the postseason?
Absolutely not. I have no faith in this Clippers roster, and that's in large part because I do not trust Kawhi Leonard for the postseason. I think he's a phenomenal player. He's getting up there in age, but injuries just plague this man's career. As I alluded to earlier in this video, he's just injury. He always hurt. So you can't count on your best player. This Clipper team goes as far as Kawhi can take them. Considering now that he doesn't even have Paul George on the squad, it's all on Kawhi. Now they have a decent bench, and they will win a decent amount of games this year. They're not going to be a bottom feeder team. I think their roster is still pretty legit, but their go-to guy is injury prone, unfortunately. So they are a pretender, in my opinion.
Do you see them making the playoffs?
I could see them. I'd have to look at everybody again, but my initial thought was yes. Considering they have the play in and everything, I think they could potentially squeak in through the play in.
Fair enough. Brooklyn Nets, whose best player, I don't know. I guess you could say maybe Cam Thomas right now. We're definitely not going to say Ben Simmons. We're not going to spend no time. They're pretenders.
Yeah.
There's nothing to say. Detroit Pistons, they're pretenders. I mean, my man Monty Williams is getting paid, but yeah, I don't think we need to spend no time on them. The New York Knicks, they've had an interesting offseason. added Mikal Bridges, brought back OG Anunoby. They got uh, Julius Randle returning. Jalen Brunson took a little pay cut to stay with them. They should have probably been in the Eastern Conference Finals, but due to my man Thibodeau playing them into the ground, they did not. What are the New York Knicks? Are they contenders, sleepers, or pretenders?
This one's hard. I don't know if I want to call them contenders. I think I want to give them the sleeper title. I think the biggest
Okay,
question
finally
mark,
got a sleeper.
the biggest my biggest issue is Julius Randle's fit. And what I mean by that is Julius Randle has the potential to elevate this team into contention status or sink this team into pretender status. I think they have to make a decision with him, and his play in the next, 40, maybe 30 to 40 games could really show up until the deadline what he can do for this team. We've seen what they can do without him, and we've also seen what they can do with him. He
Mhm.
performed at all-star level last season. Give him his flowers. I'm not the biggest Julius Randle fan for obvious reasons that I've alluded to on this show, but I think they're a sleeper because I don't know if they're on the tier of a healthy Sixers, healthy Bucks. Can they also compete with those teams? Absolutely, as most sleepers would. But assuming those teams are fully healthy and fully engaged in a 7-game series, I don't know if I'd give the Knicks the odds against them. So I'm going to put them in the sleeper category.
I mean, they're a very tough defensive team. They lost Hardenstein, which I think they need to look for another big man because Mitchell Robinson's been injury prone. They're a sneaky team that's a team that could remind fans of that 2019 Toronto Raptor team where on paper you're like, I don't know, but when it's time to show and prove, I think they can do it. I think sleepers is probably the right place for them because they're a team that can be really, really good or kind of mediocre. So I think that's a good place for them. I think Brunson had an out of world season. I could see him kind of falling back. I think teams are going to kind of understand how to play him a little better, and that could be not too beneficial for that Knicks team. But I think they'll be good enough to be where we will be questioning whether they can win a championship when it comes to the postseason. The Toronto Raptors, we're going to start moving a little bit on these.
Yeah.
They're pretenders. Uh, Scotty Barnes, solid player, but they don't have enough. Utah Jazz, same thing. I can see marketing gone before the end of the season. I think he'll. That's pretty much all they got. Yeah, so that's the Utah Jazz. You got any objections of that?
No, they stink. There's not much to say about them. Fun team to watch at times, but yeah, they're nowhere near contention.
Houston Rockets, another fun team, but I think they're pretenders. They're not quite there yet. Great work by Ime Adoka with them last year, but I think they're still pretenders. They don't have enough to really show and improve in the Western Conference. What do you think?
I agree with what you said pretty much. I mean, I like how Ime Udoka's got this team playing. Love what I'm seeing from Sengun and Jalen Green. Even though Jalen Green's a little inconsistent, he does have moments where he's looks like the go-to guy for this roster. So yeah, I'd like to see this roster develop a little bit more. They're still a little young, so I don't got them in the sleeper category, nothing like that. But they're going to be a pretty exciting team to watch in the Pretenders.
Absolutely. The Pelicans were a Zion hamstring away from making it into the playoffs last season. No, they did make it to the playoffs, didn't they?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. My bad. That was
No.
but yeah, Zion was out. I remember
Mhm.
that. And CJ McCollum played like trash. Brandon Ingram, there's a lot of question marks on him. Where do you think we should put him?
I really want to put this team in the sleeper category because I
Ooh.
believe so high in their upside. I'm not going to go that far because I need to see I need to see Ozempic Zion. I need to see him in full. I need to see him in full effect. I really wish if they could get a stretch five big man, that would help this team so tremendously. They don't even realize it. But having an inside center with him, like he had the Valanciunas is not no floor spacer, so teams can just sag in the paint. Zion does work in the paint, and he needs the spacing to do so. So if you were to get that stretch five, if one could become available, this team could easily slide into the sleeper category, in my opinion. But with the question marks of Brandon Ingram, the non-extension, floor spacing issues, Zion's health, I have to put this team in a pretender category, and it breaks my heart, unfortunately.
What do you think about this? Brooke Lopez for Brandon Ingram.
Yeah, in no world is that going to happen. I'm sorry. No, that's
I
not
mean, you got a
happening.
floor spacing big, and
Who's like 50, 55 years old?
I mean, he's productive at 55 years old.
If you could get him for the cheap, sure, absolutely, he can still space the floor and
How
block some
about
shots.
what if you throw in Portis
What Portis and
and
what
Lopez,
Lopez for Ingram?
Brandon Ingram?
Absolutely not. That's whoever makes that trade is going to get drug tested immediately.
I would do it. So maybe I should be. But the Chicago Bulls, we're not going to waste our time on them.
Shout out Josh Giddey though,
Yeah,
and the
Giddy is.
return of Lonzo Ball. This because Giddey
Oh
played
yeah,
his
yeah, yeah.
tail off in the Olympics, but Lonzo Ball is the biggest thing. Even though he won't probably get a lot of PT this year, I'm glad to see him back.
But it's good
Glad
to
to
see
see him
him back.
getting better. And this roster, sure, they might do a little something, but without DeMar DeRozan, I don't trust Zach LaVine. Pretenders at best.
Yeah. I don't think we have to dominating DeAndre Ayton. Even if he shows up, they are pretenders. Jeremy Grant, I wish he could get out of there and get with a
Thanks.
solid team. But unfortunately he's stuck there for right now. He's getting paid though, but yeah, I don't see them anywhere but not a bottom feeder out west, but a team that's just not gonna get you much. The Denver Nuggets. Before I let you loose, I heard Scap Attack talk about this. I think on the live stream Sunday, and he's calling them. He thinks they're going to have the biggest free fall of the contending teams from last season. I think he is absolutely wrong. Even though they did lose some defense with KCP, and now they're going to have to start Christian Brown, which is going to be I don't know if he fits with that starting five. I still think, even with Brown, the Denver Nuggets have the best starting five in the NBA, well, comparable to the Boston Celtics. I think they're both the top starting five teams. If they can get Russell Westbrook to really buy in and to play the way they need him to play, and I see they have Dario Saric, I think they're fine. I think they're contenders, but it's not just me. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. They're contenders, and that no bias over here. I mean, I would like to see in some spurt moments starting Russell at the one, moving Jamal off the ball, letting him have that
What?
scoring option, which what we know he's best at. You still have a lot of size and depth at the wing, or not depth, but you have a lot of size at the wing position with Porter Jr. and Aaron Gordon, of course. And of course, you got the best player in basketball, Nikola Jokic. They're still a contender. They might not be heavy favorites like they have been in the past, but they're still a contender and going to be a force to be reckoned with.
Absolutely. Keep going. OKC Thunder, they made some solid moves. They got Hartenstein, Alex Caruso, flipped him, and got rid of Josh Giddey, who was kind of their odd man out during the playoffs. They were number one team out west last year, ran into a solid Dallas Maverick team. Are they contenders or sleepers or pretenders? Where would you put this OKC team?
I'm kind of thinking something similar like New York. I'm kind of going sleepers, and I'm only going to say that because I would say the Dallas Mavericks were an inferior team to them. I just think certain players like J Dub, Jalen Williams, I think we saw consistency from Shea, but I think the rest of that roster, I mean, they were daring Lou Dort to shoot shots, and he wasn't making them consistently. So
Yeah,
I think certain players like those two need to step up. I love the addition of Caruso and Hartenstein, but we still need to see it together. They are my sleeper team in the West, and you know, check with me in again in like midway through the season where I still have them if I put them in contention category. But I need to see this group of guys perform well in the postseason. You know, get past the second round for me to even get them in the contention category. But they're close. They
yeah. I
got the
think
pieces.
they're still kind of young. There's still a lot of question marks for them. I think SGA is going to come out. You know, he's probably have a chip on his shoulder. Maybe thought he won the MVP last season. Canada was pretty much penciled into the gold medal game. Didn't quite happen. So he's got a lot to play for this season. I think they made the right moves. I thought the Gordon Hayward thing last season was what what should be on their mind about doing, getting a veteran player. That wasn't the right veteran player, but Caruso is lesser, but he's going to add something to that team. And Hartenstein is the perfect pickup for them. If they move Chet Holmgren to the 4, that's crazy. That team is going to be insane, but they're still young, and we still got to see what they can do against these more veteran teams. So, yeah, I think sleepers is the right spot. Memphis, with Ja back, healthy. What do you say?
I got them. I got them in the sleeper category. I think John Morant is that dynamic. I mean, you got to see when he was playing and healthy. I mean, they were like easily a 50+ win team for most seasons.
Yeah,
And you know, minus the craziness with John Morant, you have to respect him as a basketball player, one of the best guards in the game today. And that team, it feeds off his energy. It feeds off
yeah.
his explosive dunks, his somewhat shot creating ability, but that team needs him. He's back. That team is not as bad as they've shown in recent years because of his absence. I have them a sleeper team, and John Morant's probably going to be a sleeper for MVP. He's coming.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. And they just looked listless last year, and I thought Marcus Smart was going to be a solid pickup, but without John Morant, they just didn't have that spark. With John Morant out there, it's a whole different team. Now we're going to go over to the San Antonio Spurs, my team. Victor Wembanyama, the future GOAT, Defensive Player of the Year this coming year, and he will be in the MVP race. Gets joined by Chris Paul. CP3 gets, I guess, one more chance to kind of do what he has to do. They got Harrison Barnes from the Sacramento Kings. Are they pretenders, sleepers, or contenders? Now, if it was my choice solely, you know where I'd put them, but I'm gonna let you go.
They're pretenders. I think this roster has improved slightly, I would say. They've upgraded in certain respects. Like I said, a little bit better playmaking, a little better with their bench depth, with bringing in Harrison Barnes, who may or may not start. We don't know yet. Um, but it's really Wembanyama's season to grow, get better, probably win Defensive Player of the Year, probably Most Improved Player of the Year as well. I don't know about MVP conversation, but sure, you could probably make the argument in certain respects during the season,
MVP.
but they won't win enough games for him to win the MVP. But could they be a play-in team as their ceiling? Sure, absolutely. I don't see why they couldn't be. But if we're being realistic, yeah, they're pretenders, and they're probably looking at the bottom of the Western Conference.
I wouldn't say bottom, but I think they'll be in play in contention, possibly. But we actually have a Zoom to get on in a little while, so we're gonna have to speed up
Yeah.
uh really quickly. Minnesota contenders. Do you see them
Yeah,
falling any from last season?
nah, it's only up from here. I
Yeah.
think as long as Ant-Man takes the necessary steps, continues work on this game, McDaniels as well. Towns has to be more consistent in the clutch and in the postseason. You get those things together, easily contenders, and with those things in mind, that could get them over the hump this season if all those things work out for them.
Yeah, I think they just have a Rudy Gobert problem, but maybe that'll fix itself throughout this season. Golden State Warriors, they lose a huge name. The other half of the Splash Brothers, Klay Thompson. They add Buddy Hield and a couple other guys. Is the Golden State team done? Are they cooked, or can they somehow sneak back into the sleeper or contender role?
Nah, they're cooked. Just for
Yeah,
all intents and purposes, they're cooked. They're small. They didn't really address the needs that they needed for this offseason. So Steph Curry is great, and this team probably be okay to watch, but no, they're pretenders.
absolutely. I have to agree. Golden State. I think this is the end of an era. Bronny's Los Angeles Lakers. Are they contenders, sleepers, pretenders? They made hardly any moves over the offseason. The biggest move is they drafted Bronny James, their draft pick. I cannot remember his name. Seems like he's NBA ready, so he'll probably get some minutes. As the avid Laker fan, what do you think this Laker team has in the tank for this season?
I'm gonna turn my camera off for a second. I see a little bit of lag issues,
Okay.
and also my face is utterly disgusted with this Lakers organization. I don't even want to show my face on camera. This is how bad they are. They made no moves, right? They didn't address any issues. They're just content with running it back. They think Gabe Vincent and Jared Vanderbilt's the answer. I'm just so entirely disgusted with this roster. It is just baffling that D'Angelo Russell is still on the team. We understand that the Lakers can make the playoffs. They are a playing team pretty much. That's what where they are comfortably as a playing team. Potential seven seed if you want to give them that, sure. But I mean, letting Lonnie Walker go for nothing to the Celtics on a two-way deal. I mean, they didn't get any pieces. It's just very hard to just continue to see this like happen for LeBron's career. I don't really give a damn about the Lakers. I just want LeBron's last few seasons to be worth something, and clearly the Lakers are not on that same wavelength. Anthony Davis is all world on defense. You got those two guys. It's not going to be enough. You need more support. And I'm not saying they're a trash team, but making no adjustments after losing in the first round, that's a little frustrating if you ask me, quite frankly.
Have to agree on that. Lakers, good luck this season. The Dallas Mavericks, a team that surprised everyone and made it to the NBA Finals, added some pieces. They added Klay Thompson. They've added someone else.
Najee Marshall.
Yeah, Najee Marshall. And they did lose Derrick Jones Jr., which I think will be a loss for them to a certain degree. But are they contenders again, sleepers, or pretenders? Can Luca get the job done?
I think you have to put them in the sleeper category. I
Ooh,
think
you're not even
they,
gonna put them as a contender?
even though they made the finals, I think the teams
Ooh,
I think the teams they beat were better than them, but the difference was Luka Doncic, and I think experience in terms of OKC and the Timberwolves. I think both of those teams were better than the Dallas Mavericks, but Luka Doncic and the experience that Luka and Kyrie had trumped those younger teams who I feel are better than the Dallas Mavericks. That is why I have them as a sleeper because you have a guy like Luka Doncic on that team who can put you over the top, but you also have to make sure you have to factor in those younger teams that they will ultimately go up against. Are they ready to take on somebody like Luka Doncic? Because that roster is okay. Like I think they have a solid roster and they have improved. But again, if your best player can't guard a parked car, can I really put you in contention? Is that backcourt going to do you any favors when you got a team like the Celtics waiting for you, who's waiting to exploit all those mismatches? I can't do it. I can't put them in contention because I just don't trust in the defense of the Dallas Mavericks. I just don't.
I have to agree. I have a lot I had to say for Dallas, but due to time constraints, I'm not going to be able to say them. But I just will say this: they got lucky last year, and I know there'll be some mad Dallas Maverick fans, but they got lucky. They should never have been in the NBA Finals. If you ask me, they got lucky that Denver somehow wet the bed against Minnesota, and Minnesota just flat out, I don't know, they just
So
didn't show up. I think they were worn out from that Denver series where Ant was a non-factor and Cat reverted back to his earlier days where he was just, you know, a liability because he will shoot you out the game. I think they'll probably be in the same spot they were last year in that 4 or 5 range, and they're not going to be that much better. And I think Clay is going to be exposed this season for what he is at his advanced age. 2 teams left: Sacramento Kings. They added DeMar DeRozan, lost Harrison Barnes, of course. They still have Sabonis, De'Aaron Fox, Keegan Murray, Kevin Herter. Can they somehow slip into that sleeper role, or are they contenders? Or are they just pretenders?
I don't trust the floor spacing of their big three with Sabonis, Fox, and DeMar DeRozan, newly acquired. I think Herter and Keegan Murray will have their work cut out for them in terms of they have to be on their A game in terms of spacing the floor because outside of those two guys, that big three that they have just not very good outside shooters. So I'm gonna have to put them in the tender category, and this is mainly because I don't trust them outside 3-point line. And De'Aaron Fox has to be great. He has to be able to hit those perimeter shots for this team to go far and potentially make a deep run in the playoffs. But I don't trust De'Aaron Fox's jump shot, and I damn sure don't trust DeMar DeRozan. So yeah,
Yeah,
pretenders.
yeah, I gotta agree. Sacramento, on paper, they seem slightly better, but I think they're right where they need to be. They're pretenders. They're not going to be any of the top teams out west. So unless they just get like we talked about earlier, if they get a Pacers run where just everything kind of works out for them and key injuries when they play somebody, that might be the only way they challenge for anything. But they are right where they should be in a pretender spot. And I think we all know where these Boston Celtics, who are the reigning defending champions, didn't lose anything over this offseason. Maybe the only thing that maybe have been lost is some of Jason Tatum's confidence after that Olympic run. But everything else should be intact. They may be a year older, but everybody is able to contribute. They got to hope that Porzingis can stay healthy. And if he does, there should be no reason why they are not top out east and probably back in the NBA Finals. Agree or disagree?
Agreed. And I think Porzingis' health is definitely something to watch out for if they go up against a healthy Milwaukee or a healthy 76er squad, who was a big team, and both of them have, either a dominant big or a dominant wing that can do damage in the paint. So definitely going to need Porzingis for those series. They got lucky last season, considering that they went against like the Pacers, who doesn't have a dominant inside threat. Um, and then, Cleveland, who's their best big was Evan Mobley or Jared Allen. None of those guys are going to scare you in a 7-game series. So they got lucky, and they're going to need Porzingis if they're going to make it through a healthy Sixers or Bucks squad. Other than that, Jaylen Brown, I look for him to have a great season. Tatum going to have a revenge season, and Celtics are probably going to be right back where they were last year and in the finals. So yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, because we have so many in the pretenders, you can't quite get the whole picture, but I think you get the gist of it. Right now, our contenders for an NBA championship are the Boston Celtics, the Philadelphia Sixers, the Milwaukee Bucks, Denver Nuggets, and Minnesota Timberwolves. Teams that can give them a scare that might be able to possibly rise above and get in there are the Knicks, the Thunder, Grizzlies, and Dallas Mavericks. So we got a lot of West Coast teams, not a lot of East Coast teams this year. And then everybody else, it'd have to take some big um, trades and some big things to happen for any of these teams to rise, in my opinion. But never know. This is way too early. We could see some surprises as the season starts. I'm looking at Orlando. I'm looking at San Antonio. I'm looking at even your Lakers may not be as bad as we think they're going to be, but it's going to be an interesting season. Like I said, in 5 weeks, I believe pre or training camp starts next week, I believe.
Give or take.
So so yeah, we got preseason coming up very, very soon. We'll be talking about that. We'll be talking about our way too early season awards coming up pretty soon. So please stay tuned to Goatcast podcast. Sorry, we're kind of rushing through this, but we had a prior something on our schedule that we have to get on as soon as we get off of here. So anything before we head out?
We definitely appreciate you guys in that last video running up the numbers. Again, want to reiterate, shout out, big thanks to Sports and Fitness Rants, Sports Tea, and of course Sports Talk Only. We appreciate you guys coming on and chatting with us, and we appreciate the comments that you guys left.
Yeah,
And like I said, if you have any points you want to come on the show and debate, call in and
yeah,
you can have this conversation with me or CW, and
yeah,
let us know what you guys' thoughts are, opinions, comments, whatever the case may be. We appreciate you guys. Subscriber count went up graciously over the
yes. Thank you
weekend, so
guys.
we appreciate that. We appreciate y'all running the numbers up on the last video. So keep locking in with us. All the people who are new here, come back and see us on Tuesdays, and you might get an occasional video drop throughout the week as our schedules
Yeah,
free up in the future. But you'll definitely see both of us on Tuesdays around this time every
mhm,
week. So definitely come back, come subscribe, come support us, and we got some good content for you guys.
yep. And we'll hopefully have sports talk back next week, and maybe one other person that we're working on in the background. So again, we thank you guys. Help us get to that 200 subscriber mark. We're doing the best that we can do to try to get there, and we can only do it with you guys. We appreciate it. Um, Next week we'll probably have a little more time to kind of flesh everything out, but unfortunately, like I said, we have some prior things to get to. But in the meantime, we thank you guys once again, and we will be back soon with more content. And with that, we are out.